pause it so you can see a bit better, hopefully. Okay, so just make yourself comfortable in your chair. Remember, always, if you need to, support your back or your feet. Find a cushion or something like that, so that you're not struggling just to be upright in your chair. And then rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And you're up. On the other side. The upper part of your chest. And the belly. And your legs. Right, now settle back, feet out, with a sense of just drawing inwards and drawing together. I sometimes describe Tai Chi, borrowing a term from modern computing, as a process of defragmentation. We say, don't we, sometimes? People say to you, how are you? So, I'm all over the place today. I've got too much going on. I'm trying to do this, this, and this, and it's all very scattered, and we can't quite settle. And so this all gathering in, this drawing together of mind and body, encouraging our thoughts to settle in our body. And ideally, of course, because we're doing Tai Chi, we want to focus on things like the weight dropping and so on. But initially, it could be any point of focus that is useful to you. And at the same time, building on that and sort of coming out of that really is this sense of your whole body, one unit, rather than, again, kind of like a leg down there and an arm up here or something like that. Your breathing can be part of that process, and especially for the upper body, because when you start to breathe a little bit more deeply, you feel, again, muscles, not just in the chest, but in the solar plexus and the belly, engaging. And as you do get that settle in and that drawing together, that's when you can start to, again, just direct your thoughts, sort of nudge your thoughts towards particular things. And in particular, in this posture, the main thing is this sense of being pulled back and your capacity to allow that to happen, to yield to that. It's amazing how much we do hold tension. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself laying in bed and I'm sort of, my fingers are clenched or something like that. There's nothing to gain in that. Now bring your feet in, come to the upright position, and having gone through that once, go through the same process again. You might want to sort of adjust your feet as you do this. And the rooting down is the same feeling, but physically and mechanically, if you like, it's slightly different because everything in your upper body is now dropping down, but that same sense of draining away. And importantly, the same mental processes, encouraging your thoughts to come into your body and focusing on that downward movement. What we do find in the upright position, if we give ourselves a chance to really let the shoulders drop and so on and so forth, is this stronger quality that starts to make itself felt. And that will actually encourage you to get this sense of releasing tension, releasing tightness a little bit more, because suddenly there's something revealed, if you like, in that process. So these are qualities that we want to focus on, that we want to remain with us all the time, not just in the exercises either. So that sense of familiarity is very important. And then starting to turn your head. One thing about this growing sense of familiarity with how we can sit and stand, how we can move, is that we need to be careful not to encourage a sort of sense of negative feedback. We can sometimes find ourselves sitting or standing, moving around, and think, oh, my posture's terrible. Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. That can become a bit depressing, frankly. But the good news is that if that's what's happening, if you're noticing, oh, I'm not rooting down, or my shoulders are out of line, or something like that, take heart from that, because you're noticing it. Before you wouldn't have noticed. And that's always the first step towards changing anything, is to be aware of what you're trying to change. And then hands on the shoulders. Nobody will keep great posture, great movement, rooting down the whole time. But as we begin to notice when it's not there, we may also get a sense that the very act of noticing is all we need to do to bring about some kind of correction. It's almost like we've suddenly woken up. Oh, no, here I am. And your body responds by going back into a better posture, better movement. And then hands down to your sides. Gradually building up that picture again of your whole body, noticing the movement. So I've talked quite a lot about this movement here, the opening and closing of the chest. But what about down here, down the side of your body? Can you feel any changes further down in your body with this simple movement? Remember how to hold your hands and your fingers, that slightly cupped feeling with the spaces between your fingers. And then winding around. And then go back the other way. And rest. And then easing forwards and push back. As soon as we start moving from the center of our body, we realize that anything that happens there, hips, waist, that area, has an immediate impact both in the upper body and the lower body. So you could see this movement, as I've sometimes described it, as a little push from your hips, push from your legs. Other times you might want to focus on that rolling movement in the center of your body, horizontal rolling forwards, a horizontal rolling backwards. Remember that no one way of looking at any of these movements tells the whole story. So if you're focusing on one aspect, that's a very useful thing to do. But then after a while, you might sort of focus in a different way. The actual movement itself has a number of elements to it. So it's like looking at a picture and then going in close to look at a detail on the picture. But then every now and then you step back and you look at the whole picture again. One of the advantages of moving from the ground is that you get that real sense of the function of your legs and how they're working. But an advantage of working from the center is that we feel that very much as the hub of the movement. And then when we add the turning in, the horizontal turning, now, so we've got two planes of movement, we see that actually there's a tremendous amount of potential movement, potential pathways of movement governed by this movement in the center. And then turn the other way. So that gathering of our thoughts focuses very much on that center part of the body, which we then feel is dropping towards the ground. And of course the feet. Excuse me. And then going around. So now when we do this circular movement, we're turning horizontally, but also going forwards and backwards. So we're combining both planes of movement. You can even argue that there's a left to right and right to left vertical movement as well. Change direction. And that's a reflection of something that we say in Chen Sao Tai Chi, which says that all movements in the system are basically different combinations of the same three circles. One horizontal circle, one vertical circle front to back, back to front, and one vertical circle left to right and right to left. And then coming back to the center, sink, and raise your knee, push out. Gently push the foot in. So that pushing in of your foot is quite interesting. Just try and soften in your toes. And in the same way that we have this slight curve in the palm of the hand, if you imagine it's the foot, there's that as well. Not digging your toes in, but just having just that slight raising of the arch of your foot. And then on the other side, and quite difficult, but that sense of space between your toes. And I say it's quite difficult, partly because I think because we wear shoes a lot, quite often those shoes can be a bit tight. I think that's something that we get used to this idea that the feet are held in tightly. It's not unusual for you to feel that the size of your body will change. I've certainly noticed that over the years of doing Tai Chi, my shoe size has gone up, but simply because you're less inclined to hold your weight in. The reverse of that, though, as far as the feet are concerned, is that you can just collapse the arch of your foot. And obviously that's not desirable. You end up slightly flat-footed. So the stages go, and again, if I've demonstrated with my hand, that first of all you let your foot kind of mount into the ground, and then you very gently imagine just pulling your toes back a little bit, so you get a slight raise in the sole of your foot. It's almost like somebody's just done that to your foot. Can you see as I lift that piece of skin there, the fingers sort of drop down, and it's not a tight movement, but it just gently raises the arch of your foot and restores some of that shape to the arch of the foot. And if you remember to do that every now and then gradually that will become a habit too. Go gently, don't force that, because it can be quite strong on the muscles of the foot. But it's quite good just to have that little bit of an arch there, because we all know, we don't want to be flat-footed. It's not good for the foot for that to happen. So every now and then just remind yourself, a gentle pulling in of your toes, not a scrunching up or a tightening. So now hands down to your sides, and then forwards. Oh, sorry, I meant to do this one first. I usually forgot about that. So now hands out to your sides. This often happens when I introduce a new movement to my standard set, that it sort of slips away. Until I've been doing it for a couple of years. So that winding movement in your arms, resonating through the chest, your upper back, and down further through your body, connecting the very basic movement in your hips and your legs, i.e. that forward and backward movement, which for these first few exercises doesn't vary, but as it reaches the upper part of your body, those little subtle patterns of movement will change. So there's a lot there to gather your thoughts around. Now we can go into Fisherman Cast the Net, and there's that change. And then coming over. So that process that I've described as gathering, as with everything else in Tai Chi really, has benefits for both mind and body. We discover in Tai Chi that awareness leads the process of healing and of changing and developing in our body. But that development of the ability to draw our attention inwards really helps us to build that inner sense of quietness and stillness. Pigeon spreads its wings. it's quite a difficult thing to do, to maintain that focus of your attention. And it can be, again, a very frustrating process. I think very much should remember that actually even very advanced people in arts like this recognize how difficult it is. And it can help to have nice images of what we're doing. So one image sometimes used in sitting meditation is that training your mind is a bit like training a puppy. Trying to get it to stay still and to sit. And it just requires patience. You don't get annoyed at the puppy if it decides to go and have a little scratch or run around or something like that. This time I'm going to change to pushing a wave. Another image that I quite like is that it's a bit like a sheepdog herding sheep. Sort of chivying your thoughts, directing your thoughts into that quieter space, into that awareness of your body. And there's always something going on in Tai Chi for us to focus on. So think about the name, it's pushing a wave. How would it feel if you really were pushing into water? Where would you feel the pressure on? How would it feel on the palms of your hands and your fingers? Can you take the imagery to that really kind of fine detail? And if you can do that, can you also integrate, how would it feel here, here, here? Because you're moving into water. How does it feel when you go back? How does it change? And then rolling your hands into fists. And remember that a lot of the benefit, both the physical and the mental aspects of this, isn't so much the fact that you've achieved the goal, but so much as you've made the effort to achieve it. That's where the real benefit comes, I think. Now go back to pigeon spreads it springs, little sequence of 3. Now you can start to really feel changes in each stage of the movement, from movement to movement. One more round. Turning your hands all the way out. And then changing. And then again, change. And parting the clouds. And again, going back to rooting down and sequence of 3. Try not to be in a hurry to move from one movement to the next, but rather notice the very subtle elements. Hands next to your hips, tilting forwards as your hands drop down. So they arrive in front of your knees just at the right time. And then here they're coming down. Just a little movement in your elbows is enough to bring them around and to the beginning of the set again. Now this time, change to dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And more on each side. And then change. This time, add the horizontal turn again. One more round. Now scooping the sea and looking at the sky. and then grasping the tiger's ears. Switch sides again. And then change. And breathe out. Good. So once again, rubbing your hands together and tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Your belly. And your legs. Stand. The use of sequences and forms, sets of movements linked together in Tai Chi is very common, of course. It's one of the most visible things that we see in Tai Chi. In many ways, it's the tip of the iceberg, but in some ways, it's also a very, very good way of this, getting to grips with this gathering of your attention. You soon know when you've lost that focus of attention if you're trying to go through a 5 or 10 minute or 30-minute forms, because some of them are quite long, they're quite complex, because you just get lost. It's like those times when you're kind of like you're walking around town or something like that, and you suddenly think, hold on, I wasn't coming here. Yeah, and you were just you were lost in thought or something like that, and and it's the same thing. So the practice of the sequences really encourages this gathering of your thoughts, and it's actually a very, very important part of the whole process of Tai Chi, I think. So let's do these first three movements, rooting down the wild goose and parting the clouds, as a sequence. We're used to doing them as individual exercises. So first of all, again, thinking about your posture, let your hips sink, and first of all, rooting down. And then change into the wild goose. And then parting the clouds. So just take a few rounds to remind yourself of that sequence. Start just trying to be aware of the patterns within your body where you're feeling the resonance of the movement, the flow of the energy. I also want you to try and keep a sense of what's happening, if you like, on the outer limits of your body. So if you were doing this in water, say imagine you're in water up to the height of your shoulders, what would the feel of that be? So here, would what would you feel on the top of your arm and your hand? As you go down, what would you feel on the bottom? And so on and so forth. What about your elbows, your shoulders, the hips? How would they be interacting with this outside pressure of the water? One more round. Good. And shake out. 1 foot forwards. See if you can bring that same gathering of your thoughts to the simple act of your weight moving, rooting down in each leg, allowing your weight to root down in each leg, aware of the alignment of your hips and your shoulders. But then also, again, imagine you're in water. Feel the changes in your body as you change from front to back. And if that's difficult for you to imagine, it's an easy way of sorting this. Next time we've got a bit of a wind, go outside and do this exercise in the wind. Obviously, be safe while you're doing it, because that's also an interesting image. It's a very similar image you're facing into the wind, feel what it's like to push forwards into the wind, to allow the wind to push you back. Then after a while, turn round so it's the other way around. And then raising your toes and your heel. And stepping in. And shake out. And then on the other side. So we're gradually cultivating, training our minds, training our brain and nervous system to have a sense of focusing. And through that sense of spaciousness, stillness, that is still there, even in the midst of movement. Or at least, ideally, it's still there. As I said, we do tend to lose it, but we get it back. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then taking some steps, either forwards or backwards, depends where you've got the room. What I'm asking you to do is not easy, by the way. And in many ways, it's a very advanced level of practice, but it's not complicated either. Uh, there were some very interesting exercises. One which I've done with one of my main teachers is, you're standing there, you're holding a posture as one or whatever, and then he says, so listen to what's going on around you, the birds singing, cars moving, and so on and so forth. And every time there's a noise, so you're standing there, and then you hear a bird sing over there, and what you're trying to do is the instant you hear the noise is take your attention to the part of your body closest to where you hear the noise coming from. It's impossible, especially when there's more than one noise going on. But that's not the point. It's actually that sense of moving forwards. And it's not. I'm not talking about sort of like really kind of being sort of like harsh and disciplined on yourself. But Tai Chi always seems to have the offer of going just that little bit further. And each stage we go further. Actually, it may feel impossible, but one of the things it does is it seems to actually make what we've just been doing before, the week before or something like that, more accessible. And I've noticed there's lots that if I'm concentrating on one thing, say a movement in a form, another thing, oh, I won't worry about that. I'll go on to the next movement and I'll go on. And as soon as I do that, it's like, oh, actually, it feels better doing that other movement now. So it's quite interesting. We get kind of pulled on and our boundaries slowly expand. So 1 foot forwards, and again, let's do a little sequence. So sink your weight back, and we'll start with this movement winding around. So I'll just take you through this because I don't think I've done this one very much with this particular group. So here you get the idea. Like we do in the chair, weight goes forwards, weight goes back, and then this time we go into fisherman castanet. From fisherman castanet, as we sink the weight back, we go into pushing a wave again. And from pushing a wave, turn your hands, just let them come back and start the sequence again. Once again, imagine that you're doing this in water, because although I described them separately, working with that idea of the sort of external resistance will actually help to make you more aware of the internal patterns of the movement, because it will encourage your body to move in a much more coherent way, a much more gathered way. One more round of this. Good. And then change over. So start with your weight back, hands slightly behind your hips. Again, you start to go forwards and you sort of leave your hands behind. So for a moment, they're behind your hips. But in pushing a wave, they don't go behind. Your elbows go out. Good. And breathing that way. Lovely. Find your chair again. That's over there. So I think that sense of being gathered in, being connected, is one of the great results of doing Tai Chi practice. I have very fond memories of a day workshop that I was doing some years ago, many years ago, and it was out in Bottisham. And during the lunch break, I was just standing by a door and I was looking out. It was a fairly ordinary scene, really. There was a road and some houses, some trees behind the houses. And one of the people who was on the workshop, a regular student of mine at the time, came up and he stood there for a while. And then he looked at me and he said, "Do you know," he said, "whenever I do Tai Chi, the trees look a little bit clearer." And I suddenly realised he was right, that actually, as I say, it was just an ordinary scene. And yet, that kind of clarity, that internal clarity, gives us a clearer view of the world. And I think that's something that's very valuable to us. So, coming back and embrace tiger, return to the mountain. It has this feeling of gathering, doesn't it? Drawing yourself in. So feel the weight of your body, mostly in your hips, a little bit in your legs. Feel the weight of your arms on your shoulders. And then pushing your arms out. Come up. And embracing tiger. Return into the mountain. And then rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So,
Thank you.
always feel free if you have any questions.